So your question is, how do you determine the difference between your
Yes.
intuition and just what your mind is up to? That is a hard one, and that takes again time and practice to get the hang of noting the difference. Because, like you, I mean, I remember, oh, I've got this great intuition, and I would stop and I would meditate, and my mind would go off and all. Well, I'm going to follow that because it's great intuition. But I learned very quickly that nope, that was just my mind firing stuff off, and I would follow it, and I would say, "Gee, my intuition is really terrible. It didn't lead me to where I wanted to go at all." But what I found was we talk about, or I've talked about the practice of truthfulness, and truthfulness being a feeling that you have, like when you're telling someone that you really love that you love them, or when you are saying something that you know to be honest and true for you and has integrity. There's a feeling that I sense of like fullness with it, versus when someone asks you a question and maybe you tell a little white lie. And if you're sensitive to truth, that little white lie, even though it's not that big a deal, it kind of hurts a little bit. It's like, oh, I don't really want to say that, but so what I found was with intuition, it's a combination of in the beginning, the more you practice truth, the more you will be able to recognize when words come up, when ideas come up, when the mind or the chitta prevents or gives a sentence of understanding. Then what you can do is you can look at it and you can say it and kind of feel, is this true? And if you have that sense of fullness, that sense of, yes, this is true, this has integrity, well, then you can follow it. If words and sentences come up for your intuition and it just doesn't quite feel right, and there might be a part of you that really wants it to feel right, I know that happens a lot, but you have to be able to back off and say no. You have to, even though I want it to feel right, that there's a sense of me that just doesn't quite feel full or strong about it. And then you have to have the strength to let it go. And the trouble with that is, at least in my experience, was that sometimes you don't get any intuition in the sense of what to do. And then you're like, but I need to do something. So the hard part is recognizing that if there's no direct fullness or rightness to a possibility, the intuition might simply be, don't do anything, just let it go. The problem with intuition, what's not really a problem, it's just an understanding from yoga. So it's important for us to discuss this. We have to remember again and again that we are not entitled to what comes after we make a choice. Meaning our intuition might say, yes, go in this direction, but that in no way means that by you going in that direction, everything's going to work out exactly the way you want it to. So the hardest part of this for us yogis is to, number one, be able to recognize the sense of, yes, rightness, follow that, but also be able to recognize that just because it felt right then doesn't mean it's going to give you the result that you want. It doesn't mean it's wrong, but it doesn't necessarily mean that by you going in that direction, it's going to appease your personality. And that always goes back to that process of the Bhagavad Gita, that we are entitled to action only and not the fruits of action. If we could get our minds around that, if we could live our lives the best way we know how, and if we could do our best, and if we could be established in truth while not being caught up in whether things go well or whether things don't go well, we would be almost instantly probably enlightened. And that is our overarching task with what we are doing. And, the examples that I can think of that are big examples, and I always like to use the nuclear examples because they always seem to, I always think they pack the most punch and level the playing field, so we don't have any questions about what I'm talking about. But for example, you've heard me talk about my time with my late wife, Melissa, when she was diagnosed with an extremely aggressive form of leukemia. And she was all of a sudden, we've lived a free life, never been in a hospital, never been sick, thinking that yoga and Ayurveda is going to carry us until the 80s and 90s and 100s. Within 2 days, she's in the hospital. And she's not just in the hospital. She has to stay there for 3 weeks at a time because she has no immune system. Bam, all that happens. And we go through these treatments, and the doctors come in and they say, here are your options. And they say, your options are, chemotherapy for a long time with maintenance after that, or a bone marrow transplant. And they said none of those are guaranteed at all. So we meditated on it and we prayed about it. And the one that seemed to be the right way to go for both of us, we felt it, like there was that feeling of fullness, was the bone marrow transplant, which was the scariest one of them all. But when we made the decision, there was a sense of yes. There was a sense of fear even disappeared, despite how hard it was going to be. And we made that decision. We felt that, thinking that, well, because we had that natural sense of upliftment and fullness, we thought, of course, that means that that's the right decision, that she's going to live another 20, 30, 40 years from it. And that's not the way it went. But that bone marrow transplant led all of us to realizations and understandings that we might not have had otherwise. So it did not lead to the result that our little intellect wanted, but it led to the highest result of her feeling supremely free at the end, of me recognizing her freedom and her light, and the challenges, the emotional and psychological challenges that it brought up for us. Like, those weren't things that we said, yes, we want to do that. But by following that intuition, it led us there, and exploring that and embracing that changed all of us, everyone who was involved, her parents, even the doctors, the nurses that took care of her, and everyone. So I use that nuclear as in a nuclear bomb example, because I can't imagine anything bigger than that, so that you understand that the intuition is a real distinct sense of yes. But that yes doesn't mean you're going to get everything that you want, because it's not about you. And as you get to that feeling of yes, you do have to go through trial and error, where you kind of, I would even do this, write out what comes up in your mind that you think your intuition is giving you. And then I would look at it and I would just contemplate, is this the right way to go? And if there was a strong yes response, I would follow it. If none of them gave a strong yes response, I wouldn't do anything. And that is a way of living moment by moment, which is really the whole process of yoga. And that's what we're aiming to do.